There was a study called the Great Prayer Experiment that showed patients who were prayed for had no significant difference in their recovery from a surgery than patients who were not prayed for. And actually, a control group who were patients that were told they were going to be prayed for did worse than the other two groups who didn't know whether they were being prayed for or not. So this shows that prayer is just ineffective. It's something we just do for ourselves, and it proves that religion is all made up. Or does it? So the Great Prayer Experiment actually refers to what is called the study of the therapeutic effects of intercessory prayer, which was conducted in 2006 by a team led by Harvard professor Herbert Benson. And it was intended to see if there'd be any difference in the rate of complication in different groups, whether or not, depending on whether they were prayed for or not prayed for, but didn't know that they were being prayed for or not, and a group that knew they were being prayed for. And so the group that knew they were being prayed for actually performed worse. They actually had more complications after surgery than the other two groups, which did basically the same. But this only disproves the power of prayer if you believe in the lowest IQ level of prayer imaginable. So this study is testing, if I ask God for something, does he give it to me? That's basically what this is studying. And we don't really believe that as Catholics, because prayer is not really always, shouldn't always be about what can I get out of God? What can I ask God for? And he's more likely to give it to me because I asked for it. It should be about attuning our wills to God's will. So that's why in the Our Father, probably the most famous, popular, the most prayed prayer among Christians features the words, "Thy will be done, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And even Jesus, who prayed to be spared of the crucifixion, wasn't spared of the crucifixion. And he said, if this cup can pass from me, then let it pass, but not my will, but your will be done. So prayer isn't particularly about, hey, I'm in this bad situation, get me out of it. It's about, maybe you are in a bad situation and you say, hey, God, if it is your will, then remove this bad situation from me. But if by your knowledge, something better is happening to me through going through this bad thing, and this is your will for me, then give me the strength to bear it, basically. That is a more nuanced and correct understanding of prayer according to the Bible, according to the example given to us by Jesus. So just having people pray for something and then that thing doesn't happen, that doesn't disprove prayer. That disproves prayer if you're like a prosperity gospel believer. If you believe that God just wants you to have good things, and if bad things happen to you, it means God's mad at you. And if good things happen to you, it's because God's happy with you. If that's your level of theology, then sure, this might shake your faith a bit, but that's not most people's level of theology, thank God. And this also doesn't take into account the specific miracles that have happened associated with prayer and that have been verified by medical professionals. For example, Jordan Peterson's wife had a rare form of cancer, and at the stage that she was at, it was so far advanced that nobody had ever survived after that stage. One of her friends came to visit her every day and pray the rosary with her, and in these prayers, she wasn't even praying to recover from the cancer. She was actually just praying to face her death with grace and to be able to accept her death with peace. That was what she was praying for, not for a healing miracle. But in fact, what happened was a healing miracle. She is the only person known to have survived this cancer now after having it advanced to that stage. That is a miracle. The doctors don't really know how else to explain that. There are many other miracles as well. There are other miracles. For example, there was a pastor named Dwayne, who I'll link to a video in the description that details his healing miracle. He was a Baptist pastor. He got sick. His voice just kind of died one day and he couldn't speak anymore. He went to many experts and they said, we don't really know what to tell you. Your voice box is just irreparably damaged. There's nothing we can do. You can't ever speak again, basically. Or if he does, he could speak, but it was in a whisper and it was very hard to understand what he was trying to say. He basically hit rock bottom at that point. He was depressed. He had lost his job. He was a pastor. He couldn't be a pastor anymore. He didn't know how to provide for his family at this point. And he was on the verge of unaliving himself. He was asked to speak at a church event and he refused because he's like, I can't speak. How am I going to speak at an event? And they insisted, and then he said, fine, okay, I'll go. So he goes and he speaks, and there's a recording of this. In the middle of speaking, he gets his voice back. And then he goes back to the doctors. They have no idea how it happened. There's actually a recording of this, like I said, and we can watch it right now. Let's do that.
Recorded on that unforgettable day.
So when the psalmist writes, and he heals all of my diseases, let me say to you that I believe God still heals. That hasn't ended. That is not over. Now, you have to be careful on how you do this, because there are folks who carry things to an excess, and it becomes a show. And God has never intended that that be what it is. God heals in his sovereign will. I don't know why God does things that he does, but I know that he does. And the only thing he requires of me is to allow him to be God and me to be me. and let it be. To say that every single person will always be healed because Jesus died on the cross is a misinterpretation of Scripture. Not true. Won't work. Isaiah 53 doesn't talk about physical healing. I'm sorry. That's just not the context. And to impress that there causes a misinterpretation of Scripture. That's wrong. On the other hand, to say that since we don't have anything after the book of Acts, that miracles ended at the book of Acts and they never happen again is equally as wrong. Because you have put God in a box both ways. And he doesn't want to be in the box. So the psalmist says, I'm excited. Bless the Lord, O my soul. One of his benefits is he heals all of my diseases. And then in verse 4 he says, and he redeems my life from the pit. Now, I like that verse just a whole lot. I have had, and you have had in times past, pit experiences. We've all had times when our life seemed to be in a pit, in a grave. And we didn't have an answer for the pit we find ourselves in.
Yeah, so you can hear he's shaken up. Obviously, a very beautiful clip. I always get teared up when I hear that. Yeah, so miracles like this do happen. Like I said, he went to the doctor afterwards. They found no scar tissue on his vocal cords. It was as if nothing had ever happened, and they had no explanation for why that happened. Because even they didn't know how to heal it. So the fact that it spontaneously healed after not trying at all, just going and speaking, especially in the middle of reciting a Bible verse, seems to suggest a correlation between this healing and Christianity and the Bible. So to say that, oh, well, religion has to be false because there was a study about prayer and nothing happened, just negates all of these very well known miracles and very well documented miracles that we see happen pretty regularly in Christianity and in especially Catholicism.